that we've been having and still have up until today. And so sometimes when a lot of the artists look across the waters and they see, like for instance, what Rihanna's been able to do and some of the others, everyone says, well, this is what we need to do. But the reality is we don't have the numbers within the Caribbean to make multi-millionaires out of people just like that. We don't have a history of supporting our artists in the way of buying stuff and things like that. And so there's a twofold. What government can do is put things in place for you to give you a helping hand up. But it cannot really shape your careers. That has to be done with the artists. And if there's one thing that I would put out there that needs to be done, is there needs to be associations, the same way that in the tourism sector, hoteliers across the Caribbean, they have an organization that lobbies on their behalf, that looks out for the things that they need for them to survive. I think the artistic community would do well to begin to pull itself together and have more forums like these where we talk to each other, and then we're able to come up with our own policies and speak to our governments and have a common thing across the board.
Amen. John King, straddling both sides and bringing the experiences together. And when you call yourself director of entertainment, I've always been fascinated with government titles. You call yourself director of culture and director of entertainment, and you wonder if you are an entertainer. So that the director of entertainment in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, Mrs. Gillian Wilkinson McDaniel, who is a lawyer by profession, and she's been working for years. She was a part of, at one point, in the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment, and now she is in charge of the entertainment section of the ministry. Your perspective.
Thank you very much, Sydney. My name is Gillian Wilkinson McDaniel, and I, as you have heard, I'm in charge of entertainment policy development in the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport, MACGES for short. And my perspective actually comes from having worked in various arms. I mean, we heard about tourism, but I also worked with JAMPRO in relation to trade policy, as well as investment promotion of cultural and creative industries and film. And so the perspective that I bring is really one that is that it's one of those that actually cross-cuts a number of industrial policy, tourism policy, culture and entertainment. Before, I kind of set the stage by saying that culture has never been a single ministry for the last 25 years. When you look at the data from the Cabinet Office, culture has never been a single ministry. In Jamaica, forever, right, forever. But then let me say 25 years, right? But forever, we have never had a singular Ministry of Culture. We have had a singular Ministry of Tourism in the last 25 years. About 86% of the cabinet reshuffles, you have had a singular Ministry of Tourism. And what that means for culture is that you always have culture being diffused and dispersed. And that is true for culture in relation to data collection, which I have a very, very important interest in, and that the Ministry of Entertainment has been working on assiduously. So we know that in order for tourism and to receive funding, they have to show that they are, 12% of GDP? And so one of the things that we have been struggling, and I think all of us have been struggling within the Caribbean, is to actually ascertain what is the contribution of culture and entertainment to GDP. In Jamaica, we know that pre-COVID, we had, for events alone, we had on average 20,740 events in 2019. In 2022, when the COVID restrictions were lifted, we had over 14,000 events. Remember that COVID restrictions for entertainment lifted around April, May of that year. So for us to have registered 14,000 events in Jamaica, that's pretty significant. We have not yet received the 2023 data, but we can see from trends that the amount of events, that the sheer number of events that happened in Jamaica in 2023 into 2024, this post-COVID period is fairly significant. And so this notion of data collection for culture and entertainment is very interesting and very important. One of the things that I want to say as well is that in Jamaica, and it's very different in other parts of the world, entertainment is the idiom by which we understand culture. So for example, we're UNESCO, the United Nations Educational Scientific Cultural Organization, the OAS, Organization of American States, the Convenia Andres Bello methodology, which we see in Latin America for quantifying culture. When we look at all of that, they have a fairly narrow way of defining culture, which we don't have in Jamaica. We define culture through entertainment, and that is why I always bring up the events and how entertainment happens in Jamaica. Our Minister of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports, Olivia Grange, would always say that sport, for example, is physical culture. So how do you, there are countries that quantify sport and entertainment and culture, but as I said, in Jamaica, we are very nuanced in that way. And so our collection of that data, whether it's Barbados, Guadeloupe, Zimbabwe, it's a little bit different. We have in the ministry we have worked on a number of programs and projects and policies, and we have instituted some policies that have come from when we were joined with the Ministry of Tourism. The National Registry of Entertainment and Creative Industries Practitioners, for example, is one such that we started in 2013. The government started in 2013, and it is the way to incentivize all our various sectors. So whether it's music, film, we incentivize that through providing duty-free imports. We provide artist support, tour support. We have an artist ambassador program and a tour support program that comes out of that. We have recently announced a life and personal accident insurance, as well as a life and personal accident and health insurance for entertainers and entertainment practitioners. And why is this necessary? In 2018, we had about, let me tell you the exact number, we had 23 persons who died between 2018 and 2019. A good 1/3 of those required support from the government to assist with funeral arrangements, etc., etc. And what that meant and what that said to us is that, as John King mentioned, and it's the same certainly in Barbados, it may be the same in Guadeloupe, what that meant is that government needed to put a particular structure in place to allow for persons at the end of their life, once they have supported and once they have given so much to a country, for them to be laid to rest in dignity. And it is out of that we had to, in the similar way that we have a sports health insurance, we have a health insurance for athletes. Granted, they tend to be younger and healthier, and so they're easier to insure, but we had to put in that kind of policy intervention in order to ensure that entertainment and creative practitioners were dealt with in a respectful manner, having served their country with such distinction. And so I'm open for questions afterwards, but I think I'll stop there and allow my colleague from Zimbabwe to make his intervention.
Thank you very much. Put your hands together. That's Gillian from here in Jamaica. If Miss Lud is there, Miss Lud, I say, what kind of fenke applause that? Allow me to say this. Every man's got the right to decide his own destiny. And in this judgment, there is no partiality. So arm in arms with arms, we'll fight this little struggle, because that's the only way we can overcome our little trouble. No more internal power struggle. We come together to overcome the little trouble. Soon we'll find out who is the real revolutionary, because I don't want my people to be contrary. Natty Dread stepping in a Zimbabwe. The great Honorable Robert Nesta Marley. And with those words, I want to welcome to Jamaica and to the podium Mr. Nicholas Moyo, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Sport, Recreation, Arts and Culture in Zimbabwe. He brings extensive experience in arts management, spanning over 31 years, appointed Secretary for the Ministry of Sports, Arts and Culture in the government of Zimbabwe in October 2023. A seasoned arts administrator, having served as Executive Director of the National Arts Council of Zimbabwe for many years. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nicholas Moyo. Welcome home, sir.
Thank you, Sydney. Let me start off by paying tribute and gratitude to the invitation spearheaded by Judith and team for us to come and be part of this great gathering in the Caribbean. The invitation had come last year. We should have been here last year. Because of other commitments, we couldn't, but the government ensured that we come here. I came with one of our seasoned music producers and guitarist and musicologist, Mr. Clive Mono Mkundu, who has been participating in the last 3 days extensively in our in the sessions here. Let me also thank the panelists. I think a lot of things that are coming through here resonate a lot with what is happening in Zimbabwe. But make a commitment if Chairman extends another invitation next year to us. I would like to pick from Tanya, from Kuala Lumpur, and bring some dance hall musicians to come with us in our delegation next year. So I make that commitment. The situation that we've been driving as a country in terms of policies, one of the major things that in the years I've been working in government has been to bring together civil society and government to work together in the creation of policies that will drive the sector to the next level. Many a time we've been finding either policies being done by government, experts who do policies, and then the policies are given to the industries. And the creative industries have repelled on some of those policies. Two major policies that we have so developed in the last 5 years. One is the music strategy, which was supported through UNESCO, and we're part of pilot nations with Jamaica in those projects. And we're very excited by the knowledge that we kept on exchanging with the government of Jamaica in the creation of the music strategy in Zimbabwe, as well as the film strategy. What has come out very strong is how in that strategy, how we can make artists become part of the national social security systems that are there. Because half the time we go to government with begging bowls when the same artists at one time they were stars. They made so much money in their heydays. But because we've not capacitated our artists enough to understand that there is that season beyond stardom and how they can cushion themselves for that. And that gap needed policies that together the sector and government agree that during the time artists are making money, they can also contribute to the national social security schemes. And that becomes very important. We are also signing in the next few months with one of the leading funeral insurance companies in the country to ensure that there is a scheme that artists and athletes can be part of. And why is government pushing that? It's because we understand that the social security of our artists is important, and we create policies to cap that. But one of the main the government of Zimbabwe currently, as I'm permanent secretary, is to drive the industrialization of the sector. I think a lot of these problems that we see is because we've allowed ourselves to remain as informal sectors. We've listened to beautiful presentations that have been happening in the last 3 days. Most of our artists are doing what I call hand to mouth. We had a beautiful presentation by Whitecliffe yesterday here, telling us that wealth creation is not about making money today and spending it, making money today and spending it. It's how you use your products to make money for you. That when you come to a point when you are no longer active, but you can still receive money for part of the works that you have been doing. And to us, it's about sitting with the sector, which already now we are working on, identifying the value chain of each discipline. Is it music? Let's strengthen that value chain. Let's move away, let our artists move away from being jack of all trades. Our artist is the creator, he's the producer, he has a record label, he ends up being the consumer of the same music that he has produced. But we are saying if we are going to be an industry, let's strengthen that value chain so that tomorrow the country can have measurable, you're talking about data, talking about statistics. How can we prove that we are contributing to the GDP? And when we start to contribute to the GDP, then government also start to recognize they will not push us away. I was talking to John King and saying, when I've been an artist myself for many years, but when I became an administrator in government, you then start to realize that there is need to close that gap, that divide, so that we move together and be able to prove to government and say, you know what, this sector is equally contributing to the GDP, and therefore government can prioritize reinvestment in the sector. And I think we've come here to share, and we are learning a lot, and some of the things that are happening in Zimbabwe are critical. Lastly, Sydney, has been the issue of IP, the intellectual property. Copyright has been a very thorny issue, which we have learned a lot of some of the discussions we saw here yesterday, and we'll be able to go and implement back in our country. I thank you.
Thank you very much. And this is where the conversation becomes fluid. I see her, but do we have mics? Yes, okay, good.
Yeah, we have
and
mics.
then you,
We have microphones.
yes.
No.
Just raise your
I
hand
want
and I'll
to.
acknowledge.
Here I am. Question: in terms of the Caribbean and how we move forward with one voice as a group of islands with music, culture, entertainment, I want to understand from our team of experts: has CARICOM met its objective as far as culture and entertainment? And if it has, can you explain it just a little bit? And as we're now in 2024, and there's now the digital experience, and there are all these global things that we want to cover, how will we, as a Caribbean, move forward? Is it best, and I'm asking a number of things, but in the understanding of it, is it best for us to move forward as Jamaica by itself, Trinidad by itself, Guadeloupe by itself, or is it better to move forward as one? And how will the various governments see to it that this is done and that artists get the help that they need to get it done?
Okay. So it's a lot, but let me see if I can unpack as much as I can. As a minister, just for about 3 years, I had the opportunity to sit down in cultural ministers' meetings, and they're pretty much broad-based, so it's not just about music. We had the opportunity to sit down and look at some of the issues, even as was mentioned here, in terms of copyright. A number of the territories within the Caribbean have no copyright societies at all. So this is one of the things we have to look at. And then the way that we do things, like for instance, in Barbados, when radio stations, for instance, are doing their measurements for your copyright, it's not done on every day. It's done once a week. So for instance, you can have a song that's been playing every day, every day, every day, every day. But one day in that week, they take note for your payments. So we have these differences in terms of how things are done internationally across the region. And if we can bring everything into a single way of how we do these things, how we treated them, then it's all right. But we don't have that. The second thing is it's a numbers game. And let's not fool ourselves. Our populations are extremely small. Barbados, 280,000 people. You know, so even if you're looking at live entertainment, you're asking, the rule of thumb for many years has been that 1% of the population would support the arts and things like that on a regular basis. 1% of that is 2,800 people. So you can imagine an artist putting on a concert, and he has that small number to deal with. But then there are 5 other concerts on at the same time, and people have to choose. So you begin to understand, when we look at it in the world terms, that a one-size-fits-all does not work for us, because we are very different. And therefore, the expectation of the artists themselves has to be measured and tempered within the culture and within the actual physical that you have. You know, so oftentimes the policies themselves are going to reflect the reality of where we live, and not the reality of the world, in terms of when we look out and we see, oh, this person from, you know, what's happening with K-pop and these things in Asia and all these. We have to measure it not by that standard and then think to ourselves, well, oh, we're failing because we're not selling millions of dollars of records or music or downloads or whatever we're doing these days. We have to be very specific in understanding our own limitations. Okay. And so in that, I said all of that just to set the stage to let people understand that when you go to these meetings and you have government ministers sitting down to talk, there are no technocrats there. In terms of, no, they're not technocrats. They're your cultural meetings. These are the ministers talking to each other.
That's a change, John. That's a change.
No. When I say they're not technocrats, not that they're not technocrats in the ministries themselves.
No, I mean at the meetings.
No, right. Just bear me out. So when I said they're not technocrats, they're not persons who are out there every day measuring, doing the mapping and these types of things in those meetings, who can give you the information. The persons who are going to be there are going to be, like, as you would know, permanent secretaries or others who, again, have second-hand information, not the grassroots information that you can work with. And so until we get to the stage where we have those conversations, which really go to the grassroots of it, so that you understand all of the problems, all of the shortcomings, and all of the things, you're still at a governmental level dealing with a very wide thing. So it doesn't get very specific in terms of music. That's one.
If I may, I think Judith had asked a question about CARICOM and CARICOM policy, and I would say that CARICOM had, in their 2022 to 2030 strategic plan, they prioritized intellectual property as well as IP and culture and creative industries. Yes. So there is an understanding that culture and creative industries is necessary and a priority sector for all our Caribbean countries. They have not, however, and CARICOM never really does this, they have not really funded culture and the creative industries in a very big way. Although this national registry that we see across the Caribbean, so Trinidad had the first national registry of cultural practitioners in 2012, Barbados followed suit afterwards, and Jamaica has also a national registry. That is coming out of the CARICOM conversation. And so, and there are other national registries that I know are in train, but the national registries, let me say, are extremely important because it really does help us to understand the size of our industries, of our local industries. And then as a CARICOM unit, we then can quantify what's the critical mass of companies and individuals that we have in each sector. So these are very important things that we're actually doing in CARICOM to deal with culture and the creative industries. I don't remember the rest of your question, no, Judith.
No, leave the rest. Yes, leave Judith, please. No, hold on.
Based on now being cognizant of the numbers, based on the e-registers, which is a very good initiative, what has that helped now the governments to do? How are we moving forward based on knowing the numbers?
Go quickly.
No, well, that also informs how we structure our policies. It also informs even that insurance, because insurance companies will provide a certain amount. Well, they will tell you how much you're going to be paying for your premium based on the sheer numbers of persons that you are presenting. So if we are presenting 2,200 persons in the sector, it tells us what the premiums will be. So that actuarial conversation that happens is how we can help the sector, and that's just one example.
Okay.
It also helped us to give support when we needed to during the closure.
Yeah. Ms. Grenade.
Yes, each country has its own cultural policy, but I think that it's very important and interesting to move forward all together. We are also here in Jamaica for cooperation. We were received at the Ministry of Culture to lay the foundations for cooperation in several fields. And we suggested that a working group or steering committee be created to identify fields of cooperation, which was accepted. Thank you very much again. So it will let us work together, discuss together, and finally sign a cooperation agreement between Guadeloupe and Jamaica, and I think that it can be a first step.
I'm going to take two more questions. I wanted to say is to explain something about CARICOM myself, but I'll take some questions, not just one, and then we'll just respond. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Jodianne Brown. I'm a percussionist as well as a cricketer. So I meet at a very interesting intersection. I think my question is a multiple part question, but one, it almost seems as if it's always a bit too late when players and artists learn about taxes and insurance. And so how do we start those conversations sooner in our careers? The other part of the question would be around national budgeting. How do we become a part of the question or the conversation? How do you know our needs so that more funding can go into culture? Because it's such a rich space and it gives us so much, but it feels like we give it so little in terms of a monetary value. And the other question is, we can always thank Mr. Shaggy, Ms. Burke, Ms. Butley for this conference, but how do we continue the education? How do you help artists, managers, athletes to know this knowledge so that we can make better decisions?
Okay, thank you. I saw another hand somewhere. Okay.
No, we're running out of time, so we could just try it there. By the way, thanks. I've been watching everything and listening to everything, so thank you very much for your commentary, but we're running very tight on it, so if we can answer her question, it'd be great.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, in the past, the government of Jamaica has supported artists to attend international forums like this, so WOMEX and all of those. And I think our support as government of the Island Music Conference is how we want to build capacity within the Caribbean and to kind of broaden that kind of engagement of our within the Caribbean. So instead of spending however many euros to go to a WOMEX that is in Spain or Portugal or wherever, and those inclusions are important, but we spend quite a bit of money to do that when in fact we can be building something here that is indigenous to the Caribbean. And that is why something like this, just to answer your question, is so very important. And that is how we're looking as Caribbean governments to broaden and deepen the stakeholder engagement in relation to music and sport.
And just to add in terms of CARICOM, government, the crucial thing is to get the knowledge of government policy in the industry. Because in fact, in 2010, we negotiated the Economic Partnership Agreement and the Protocol on Cultural Cooperation with the EU. And one of the very important elements of that cooperation says, if, for example, a Jamaican, like say the IMC, if the IMC decides to have a relationship, cooperation with a European organization to put on a conference like this in Europe, by the terms of that agreement, it becomes recognized in Europe as native to Europe, as indigenous to Europe. And so that activity will receive funding and the kind of support that Europe, because we're seen as a European product as well. And that is something that we, to the best of my knowledge, we have never taken up. The same thing happens with the ACP. We had a discussion with the ACP earlier in which African, Caribbean, Pacific countries have a project with the EU. And again, in the Cotonou Agreement, that there is a discussion that said the same thing. Zimbabwe and Barbados could come together to do a project. And because it's two of the three parts of the EU, three-part ACP, then it would be a project that could attract European funding. These are things that we have not looked at. Other things that we need to look at is how music can be the foundation for the rest of the creative sector. So, for example, if one remembers that Champagne was once just a little district in France, and everybody drinks it, the issue is, one of the challenges, how can we use the music industry to spawn the other industries? So, for example, when there's a festival like Rotterdam in Spain, should we not have Jamaican designers? A lot of artists in Jamaica wear Carlton Brown's designs. Why should there only be Ralph Lauren? In 2000, Ralph Lauren used the colors of Rastafari as his pitch for his fashion industry for that year. Why shouldn't we go to him and say, for using our product, how can we work with you to get Jamaican designers with the music, with everything? How can every tourism conference, that the music is foundation and everything builds upon it? And that is the kind of government policy and CARICOM policy that works. Well, thank you very much for the afternoon.
Thank you very much to all our panelists and everybody else. Great discussion. What I'm sitting here and listening to is a lot of these points that have been brought up where I need further discussion. It's not just a little, 1 hour discussion or whatever it is. Clearly these are big problems that we have that we need a lot more time. And I'm happy this forum is here so that we can basically at least start the conversation. And at some point, we can probably follow up on it down the line. It'd be great if something else can be organized and, that it will help us. Because the main thing is this, you don't want a situation where artists, we've seen so many artists, the amount of GoFundMe we have these days for artists who have lost their intellectual properties and them can't support themselves after a while. It is sad. And, this culture thing is big business. Right, when you said it need tourism, if you have 12% of GDP, and I don't think there's a way to really measure the cultural side of things. That needs to be rectified, because it is a big part of it. It's a huge part of it, and if that is what they're going to pump money into it to know how much the percentage, and they don't know how to tally it, then that's a problem. That is a huge problem. Jamaica is the mecca of culture for the Caribbean. It's the only place that doesn't have a cultural venue. Trinidad have a big, nice, shiny one. When you walk, you go straight into the savannah there, so. Right? We don't have one as the cultural hub of the Caribbean. And I think that is sad, in my opinion. And I've known there have been talks for one for years upon years, and we just talk, and it can't build. Right? So let's start put highlights. And most of the time where them things that happen is just we as public don't get involved. We can talk about it, but nobody now put it to paper. Nobody now get up and go farm committees and petitions and things like that to make it go. And that's one of the things. So thank you very much. We have to move on. I say everybody on our but please have the conversations with them on the sideline if you can, but we're out of time. All right? Bless you.